Hey guys, tonight we follow a mystery. Most people never think to ask where was Jesus between the cross and the empty tomb. What happened in those silent hours when his body lay still? Yet the Spirit of God was not done moving. You're about to follow him not with fear, but with wonder. You'll walk alongside the one who slipped past death, as if it were a curtain, not a wall. We're going to heaven, but not in the way anyone ever imagined. Jesus is not yet risen, not yet glorified. But tonight, he travels not to escape suffering, but to fulfill something older than time. And you're going with him. Unless, of course, you forgot your wings or your backstage pass to the eternal throne. So before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. Drop your city and your local time in the comments. I'd love to know where in the world you're listening from. Now dim the lights, maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum, and let's ease into tonight's journey together. It begins in silence. Not the kind that feels empty, but the kind so full it presses on your chest like a hush in the air before a revelation. The ground in Jerusalem is still warm from the midday sun, though the skies turned black just hours ago. Somewhere beneath the earth, his body rests inside a borrowed tomb, wrapped in linen, still and heavy. But you are not in the tomb, you are rising. You feel it not with muscles, not with breath, but with something else, something deeper. You are no longer held by time, neither is he. Jesus, whose body lies still in stone, is not there. His spirit has already departed, and where you are now, it is not earth. The boundary between heaven and death is thinner than anyone thought. You step through it without needing to push. It opens for him. And because you follow him, it opens for you too. At first, all you hear is wind. Not the kind that moves trees, but the wind that once hovered over the deep before the world began. It brushes past your ears like a whisper from before memory. You sense color before you see it, like a sun rising behind your eyelids. Gold, blue, violet, white, not just visible light, but spirit light, carrying meaning more than brightness. Jesus stands ahead of you. No robe, no crown, no blood, now just presence. The kind that makes space bend around it. He looks upward, but there is no sky. Only layers, dimensions, realms stacked like folded cloths waiting to be unveiled. You move with him, slowly at first, as if the space between here and there requires reverence. You do not walk, you lean, drift, like a soul being carried in the current of holiness. And then it begins. Above you, though, above isn't quite right, you see the edge of heaven parting. Not like a gate, more like a scroll unrolling, or maybe a curtain drawn back at the end of an ancient play. Angels do not rush to meet him, they hesitate. Not from disrespect, but from awe. There is a weight around him, not the weight of defeat, but of fulfilled purpose. Even in spirit, the marks of crucifixion pulse around him like echoes. You hear one seraphim whisper to another, his 6 wings quivering, "Is it time already?" But Jesus says nothing, not yet. His silence speaks louder than thunder, and you realize the quiet in heaven tonight isn't stillness, it's anticipation. The streets of heaven, the ones made of something like gold, but softer, warmer, do not glitter, they glow. As Jesus steps onto them, you hear a sound like breath held by the stars, the kind of pause the universe makes when God walks past. And somewhere unseen the throne stirs. It is not empty, and yet it waits. The Father is there, but veiled by glory, by light, by something too vast to name. He does not speak, and somehow that silence is more thunderous than anything you've heard. You want to speak, ask something. Maybe, why is Jesus here now? But the question answers itself in your heart. Because this isn't a visit, this is a reclaiming. Jesus isn't escaping death, he is conquering it from the inside. And still no words. A seraph who looks like he's carried sons on his back tries to step forward, but he stops, he bows. Not because he must, but because the holiness coming off Jesus bends his very being. Behind you, the echoes of earth grow dim. No more wailing, no more hammer, no more thorns, only heaven. Jesus finally moves not to the throne, not yet, but to a platform surrounded by 24 seats. Elders, once mortal, now glorified, sit, watching their crowns held in their laps. You feel the weight of history in their presence. One of them, white bearded skin like warm bronze, leans in and whispers, "It's the first time he's returned since before the worlds were made." And just as you start to wonder what's next, Jesus turns his head just slightly. and for the first time you feel it. You're not here by accident. You're being allowed to watch. Heaven knows you're listening. The air begins to pulse, like a heartbeat but deeper, slower, timeless. You realize it's not your heart, it's heaven's. And Jesus, he's just getting started. You glide just behind him, close enough to feel the wake of his movement, but never quite able to catch up. Jesus doesn't look back, not because he doesn't know you're there. He does. But right now, all of heaven is focused forward. He steps deeper into the realm, into something hidden behind even heaven's normal brilliance. The light shifts, not brighter, but older, like walking into a cathedral made of light where every beam has a memory. And then it happens. Not in the sky, but in the very fabric of this divine place, a veil splits. Not torn like the one in the Jerusalem temple, though that one did tear first. This one opens without hands, without sound, without force. It just yields, like it recognizes who approaches. You pass through it with him, and suddenly everything feels quieter yet more awake. The light is softer, but your soul feels clearer. This is a part of heaven not always open. A section so holy that not even the cherubim who guard the outer halls enter freely. Only one may walk here at will, and tonight he does. You remember the temple veil on earth, the thick, towering curtain that separated the holy place from the most holy. It was said to be as wide as a man's hand, impossible to tear. But it tore the moment Jesus died. What few realize is that something tore here too. Not from top to bottom, but from within to beyond. Because Jesus isn't just returning to heaven, he's reclaiming access for humanity. This hidden veil you pass now isn't meant to shut people out anymore. He is opening it permanently, not just for himself, for you. Still, he walks without speaking. You notice the angels watching from a distance. Even the high ones, the thrones, the dominions, stay behind the split. They do not follow him through, not because they fear, but because they revere. Jesus enters a chamber that seems to bend the laws of reality. Not a room with walls, but a realm made of layered presence. You feel history, prophecy, worship, and waiting all stacked in the air like folded linens in an eternal closet. In the center stands a pedestal, on it nothing, but you feel something there. Jesus approaches the pedestal with no hesitation. You realize that this is the divine mirror of the Ark of the Covenant, but here it's not golden, it's alive, moving, pulsing slightly as if breathing. And Jesus pauses, not out of uncertainty, but out of recognition. This is the moment heaven acknowledges what earth just witnessed. The Lamb has been slain. No voice booms, no trumpet sounds, but you hear a deep, soft tone resonate through this hidden space, like the note of a stringed instrument plucked once perfectly. Then suddenly movement. A ripple across the spiritual realm. The veil behind you still parted, flickers as if windless curtains caught a breeze. Light pours in. A low hum begins to build from unseen sources, like a song being remembered after centuries of forgetting. And just then a presence stirs near the throne, not the Father directly, but something like his shadow, his echo. A manifestation of will, not form. This is not the place for words. It is the place where decisions live after they're made. And Jesus stands before it, still marked by the cross. You catch it now, his hands. Even in this celestial form, the wounds remain. They don't bleed, but they burn slightly with soft radiance, like stars wrapped in cloth. He raises one hand, not in protest or demand, but in offering. And the veil, which had already parted, shimmers again, this time in acknowledgement. This is heaven's answer. The divide is ending, but not without cost. A few paces away, another figure flickers into view. An angel you've never seen before. His form is jagged like broken crystal, slowly reforming. You realize he has spent eons guarding this veil, never crossing, never speaking. He nods once at Jesus, then vanishes. His duty is finished. Some believe this veil was never meant to stay closed. Others argue it was protection from God's glory, from judgment, from something too holy for human souls. But tonight, Jesus walks through it not just as God, but as man. Both. Forever, now. And you realize something else. This moment isn't just cosmic, it's personal. Because every time you felt God was distant, veiled, unreachable, this was the answer. Not in thunder, not in fire, but in a quiet step through an invisible curtain, torn not with force, but with love. The walls of the chamber begin to dissolve, not fade, dissolve, as if their job was only to hold the space until Jesus arrived. Now that he has, there is no more need for separation. And you feel it, the hush of billions of souls watching from heaven, from earth, from time itself. A ripple of warmth passes over you, as if the air just remembered your name. You're not a bystander. You are part of this. Jesus turns and his gaze passes over everything, over the halls, the angels, the spaces beyond the veil. And then, for a split second, he looks right at you. Not symbolically, not metaphorically. You, and in that look you feel it, he knew you'd be here. He wanted you to see this. Because this moment when the veil splits in both realms is the start of something new. Not the end of death, but the beginning of unbroken access. You inhale deeply, though your body is elsewhere. Your soul feels light. You realize sleep isn't just rest. Sometimes it's an invitation to witness the holy. You float just a breath behind him now, drawn not by will, but by gravity, the kind that pulls souls, not bodies. Jesus walks ahead barefoot on floorless light. He's not in a hurry. He never is. Eternity doesn't tick here, and yet something urgent pulses beneath the stillness. He pauses at the edge of what looks like a great descent, a slope not of stone but of stars collapsed into a spiral. It doesn't fall into darkness, it falls into purpose. This is the moment, the first step beyond death. Not the grim silence of Sheol, not the fire and brimstone of poetic judgment. No, this is something older, quieter, more intimate, a place only one man can enter by choice. Jesus steps forward. You follow. As you pass into this next layer of divine geography, you notice the shift. It's like falling without dropping, moving without displacement. It's slow and instant. Your senses flicker in patterns you can't name, and suddenly you arrive. It isn't a place, it's a state. Call it the borderlands, the breath between crucifixion and resurrection. Where heaven is aware, earth is grieving, and hell is watching. Here Jesus does not speak, but the realm around him reacts. The air thickens with memory. You feel it in your soul, fragments of cries, prayers, sighs from millennia past. He walks through it all not as a visitor, but as one returning to fulfill a task left untouched since Eden. And then ahead you see it. A pathway made of echoes, moments from scripture like flickers of scenes frozen mid-breath. You glimpse a prophet's tears, a king's secret doubt, a child's bedtime prayer whispered in fear. These aren't visions. They're real, suspended here, still waiting for fulfillment. Jesus walks between them like a thread weaving a long-forgotten pattern back into the eternal fabric. You pass one echo and pause. A man kneels under a tree. His words form silently on his lips. How long, O Lord? He has no idea that thousands of years later, the one he waits for will pass right by his cry. Jesus glances at the man, not out of pity, but completion. The echo shivers, then dissolves gently, as if finally released. You continue. Somewhere behind you, an angel exhales. Here in this strange halfway place, even angels learn. You move on. Jesus now approaches an unseen boundary. There are no walls, no gates, just attention, a line not drawn but understood. And on the other side, you don't know, but he does. You realize this is not just a journey after death, it's a reordering, a restoration. You pause as he lifts one foot and lowers it across that line. Nothing visible changes, but something deep within you shivers. Jesus has just stepped out of time, truly completely. He is now in the place where chronology surrenders to divine intention, where past, present, and future are not separated by ticks on a clock, but braided into one perfect now. And you get to watch. Some believe Jesus simply rested after the crucifixion, that his spirit lay still waiting for dawn. Others argue he descended into hell, fought demons, reclaimed keys, but what if he wasn't fighting? What if he was fulfilling? There's a difference. Fighting implies resistance. Fulfilling means it was always planned. As you drift beside him, you begin to notice something strange. The air carries a heartbeat, not yours, not his, but the Father's. Thump, pause, like the universe itself is alive, and tonight it knows its Messiah is home. You glance downward, not down as in earth, but down as in deeper. There are more levels, more mysteries, and he's heading toward them. You catch a shimmer in the distance, the faint outline of something massive beneath everything. A presence, waiting. It knows he's coming. You don't yet know what it is, but your soul trembles slightly at the thought that something so old, so hidden, still breathes in anticipation of him. Jesus stops again. You hover beside him. There's no sound, only movement. The realm shifts slightly like a ship adjusting course without stirring the waters. You look at him, and for the first time since this journey began, he speaks. Just one word. Ready? Not loud, not commanding, just true. And with it, the fabric of this sacred realm opens not like a tear, but like an inhale. You realize now death didn't take him. He entered it, by choice, to rewrite the very laws beneath existence. And now you follow him further into the next layer, the next secret. You may not fully understand it, But he does. He always has. You descend with him not downward in space, but deeper in essence. There are no stairs here, no escalator of clouds, just a thinning of layers like silk being pulled aside from eternity's face. And then stillness. You feel it before you see it, the thick, weighty reverence that hangs like golden mist. The kind that silences even your thoughts. The kind that feels like it's watching you back. You've arrived at a chamber unlike any before. Vast, vaulting, ancient, not in architecture, but in memory. The space seems carved from light and time and worship, and lining its edges are beings you can barely comprehend. Angels. But not the kind from bedtime paintings or stained glass windows. These are seraphim, the burning ones. 6 wings each, but they do not fly. Instead, they float like thoughts halfway between word and action. 2 wings cover their faces, 2 cover their feet, and 2 hover outward, vibrating with silent praise. Their form glows so intensely you can barely see it, but their reverence, that you feel, and every single one of them lowers their eyes. Not because they don't want to look at Jesus, because they dare not. You understand it instinctively. His wounds still shimmer. His spirit radiates something they've never carried: the memory of pain, the authority of humility, the dignity of a God who died. One seraph tries just for a moment to peek through his wings. He flinches. His face folds in on itself like a flame caught in a wind it wasn't made for. He doesn't scream, but a single note of broken awe escapes his throat. Jesus says nothing. He keeps walking straight through the chamber, as if he has a destination even the highest beings can't imagine. You trail behind, your soul trembling. You're not afraid, but you feel exposed, like walking barefoot through holiness. Every step reveals something about yourself, and still, he lets you follow. A soft joke floats into your mind, something about needing sunglasses for your spirit. You don't laugh out loud, but you smirk inside. He heard it anyway. You feel a shimmer of amusement ripple in the air around you. That's Jesus, always hearing, always present, even in eternity. The angels begin to sing, but not with sound. Color changes. That's the best way to describe it. The atmosphere itself vibrates in hues and tones. Blue turns to silver. Gold deepens into scarlet. You feel worship not in your ears, but in your marrow. Each shift of light says something in a language older than words. Holy, worthy, returned, scarred, sovereign, lamb. You don't know how long this goes on. Time here moves like water in dreams. Slow, melting, meaningful. Eventually, Jesus nears a place so brilliant, even the angels stop floating. They descend to the floor, wings, folded heads bowed. Not in sadness, in complete reverence. You see it now at the far end of the chamber, a presence. Not a being, not a throne, just presence. The throne itself is here, but obscured. Not by shadow, by glory. Light so pure it's nearly invisible, like glass refracting all things at once. And from that presence comes no sound, no decree, no movement. Just stillness that speaks everything at once. The Father. He does not rise. He does not greet. But heaven responds to him without action. Jesus stops before the throne, not quite at its feet, but close enough to be swallowed in its light. He doesn't bow. He doesn't need to. This is not hierarchy. This is union. And in that moment, something extraordinary happens. The seraphim begin to cry. Not loudly, not with drama, but with the trembling joy of those who finally see a secret come home. Because they knew of the plan. They'd seen the scrolls. They'd watched the manger, the miracles, the cross. But none of them knew what Jesus would look like after. Scarred, glorious, quiet, victorious. Some believe angels cannot feel grief. Others argue they can, but only when permitted. Right now, they weep. Because this is the Jesus who descended below their knowledge, who emptied himself beyond comprehension, and who returns not to reclaim his former place, but to change it forever. He doesn't speak, but his presence speaks for him. The Father remains still. But in that stillness, galaxies hold their breath. You feel your own chest rise and fall with something that feels like worship and awe and sorrow and wonder all at once. And suddenly, in the center of the chamber, a book appears. It wasn't placed. It wasn't summoned. It simply is. Resting on a pedestal that you didn't notice before, as if it only exists when he's ready for it. You know what this is. Somehow you just know. The Book of the Slain Lamb. It is sealed, locked with 7 seals so radiant they hum. Jesus steps forward. You want to stop him, not out of fear but instinct. That book feels like it holds the fate of everything. He places a hand upon it. Doesn't open it? Not yet. But even his touch makes the seals shimmer with readiness. You inhale sharply, not out of anxiety, but from the awe of watching something you were never supposed to see. And Jesus, he looks again not at the angels, at you, and smiles. As if to say, you belong here more than you know. The book hums under his touch, vibrating with a resonance you don't hear so much as feel, like the echo of your name, spoken in a dream you've forgotten. 7 seals shimmer around its edges, pulsing softly, each one alive with ancient power. None of the angels reach for it, not even the elders near the throne stir. Because this book, this scroll sealed since before the world began, has only ever waited for one hand, and tonight it has it. Jesus doesn't open it, not yet. But even resting his palm upon it seems to stir reality itself. Somewhere far off, stars flicker in synchronization. A gentle quake brushes across heaven's outermost gates. You wonder if Earth feels it too, a breeze, a shiver in a sleeping child, a dream of something sacred. You step a little closer. He lets you. The pedestal holding the book doesn't seem carved or built. It grows from the floor, formed not of stone, but woven essence like light spun into something solid. It accepts his touch like the roots of a tree finally finding their long-lost water. Jesus lifts his hand slowly, respectfully. His eyes soften, not in weakness, but in weight. The kind of weight only a person who knows every consequence can carry without collapsing. Then he turns, not to the throne, to the stars. You follow his gaze and see something unimaginable. The Council of Stars. They are not angels, not elders, not people. They are beings, witnesses, older than language, yet shaped like thought. Their forms resemble constellations, flickering with sentience. Each one floats within a frame of celestial mist, their faces unreadable and radiant. You count 12, then 24, then more until counting feels irrelevant. These are the ones who watch the world's foundations be spoken into place. And now for the first time since creation, they stand. Their rising is slow like mountains, lifting their heads like galaxies bowing upward. They have not moved in millennia. But tonight they rise not for battle, not for judgment, for acknowledgement. Jesus meets their gaze one by one. He doesn't speak. He doesn't need to. Some tilt slightly forward, their energy folding in reverence. Others emit a low hum like a celestial throat clearing, gentle, stunned. One of them glowing like Sirius flickers dim for a moment, a gesture of respect, or perhaps surrender. You feel the tension in the air, not danger, not resistance, but reverent awe. This is not the return of a king demanding his throne. This is the approach of a lamb who bled, now welcomed not as conqueror, but as fulfillment. Some believe the stars sing, others say they listen. Tonight they do both. Jesus walks past the pedestal, the book still untouched, and into the center of this great witnessing circle. The council makes space, adjusting with gravity that responds not to mass, but to meaning. You stand at the edge, barely able to comprehend the scale of what you're witnessing. And yet, you are not excluded. You belong in this scene not as a participant in power, but as one invited to see. Jesus stands in the center. Then finally he speaks. A whisper. It is not yet time. The words fall like feathers and hit like thunder. The council doesn't speak back, but the stars themselves shift. Somewhere deep in the realm, a bell chimes, not cast in metal, but in eternity. One soft tone, enough. Jesus turns again, and this time a smile flickers. There's a soft joke now, maybe in your own mind. Something like, imagine having a meeting with stars and still being the most important person in the room. He feels it too. The humor is light, holy, almost mischievous. He invented joy, after all. You notice now the council slowly folding back into silence. They do not vanish. They resume their stillness, their watchfulness, their role as keepers of witness. But something has changed. Their silence is now filled with knowledge. They no longer wait for permission. They now wait for him. Somewhere above, a ripple of light rolls across the ceilingless sky of this chamber, like heaven blinking in relief. And still the book waits. Its 7 seals don't fade. They thrum with purpose, knowing the time has not yet come. But now they know who will open them. And so do you. Some scholars wonder what's written inside that book. Is it judgment? Is it destiny? Is it the very names of the redeemed? Others suggest it contains the final version of everything, the ultimate resolution. The closing chapter of God's story written from the first sentence. But tonight Jesus lets it remain sealed. Because his visit is not about endings. It's about bridges. He walks away from the council, away from the book, toward a corridor of quiet shadow. You follow but glance back once. And in that glance, the book flickers not open but aware. It knows the one it belongs to. And soon, the world will too. You step into the shadowed corridor behind him. It's not dark, just hushed. A sacred dimness like the inside of a tabernacle at midnight. Light is still present here, but it doesn't shine. It listens. Jesus walks slowly now. Not out of weariness, he is beyond that, but out of deliberate intent, like someone about to open a drawer containing old dangerous memories. The walls around you shimmer, faintly shaped not from stone or cloud, but remembrance. The further you go, the more the silence thickens, not heavy, but holy. A silence that protects something very old. Then he stops. Before you, half buried in the folds of reality, is a door. Except it's not really a door. It's more like a threshold made of reverence. There's no knob, no lock, no hinges. Just a pulsing outline in the air that seems to say, enter only if you were meant to. He was. And you, tonight, are allowed to follow. As he steps through, the threshold folds inward like mist drawn back by a breeze. You step across it, and immediately your spirit stirs. Something is different here. This place is lower, deeper, older. The light has changed again, now a dull gold tinged with crimson. Not the crimson of blood, but of covenant. And you feel somehow that you're standing beneath the altar of heaven. There's no incense, no thunder, no singing, just waiting. And then you see them. Shapes, forms, souls, thousands, maybe more. They line the chamber's edges like ancient sentinels, not in chains, not in pain, but in pause. Their eyes are closed. Their hands rest in their laps. Some kneel. Others sit. All are still. The quiet is not empty. It is full of faith. These are the ones who died long before Calvary, the faithful from before the cross, the ones who trusted the promise but never saw its fulfillment. Noah, Job, Ruth, Isaiah, maybe even your ancestors. Somewhere deep inside your spirit recognizes them, not their faces but their posture. They are sleeping in promise. And now that promise is here. Jesus walks among them slowly. With every step, a few begin to stir. Not wakefully, just shift. Their hands twitch. Their heads rise slightly. A murmur moves across the chamber like a wind through wheat. One figure in particular sits closer to the center. You recognize him not by face, but by impact atom. His presence hums with origin. He looks older than years should allow, and yet timeless like the memory of humanity still etched in the dust of Eden. He lifts his head slowly, eyes meeting Jesus. They don't speak, but something passes between them that hits you like a chord struck inside your chest. A long, unfinished story, finally reaching its turning page. Adam's face softens not with shame, but with relief. The kind only someone who has waited thousands of years can feel. And still Jesus walks. Further in the chamber lies a platform, simple, unadorned, carved not from material, but from obedience. It is the altar beneath the altar, the foundation upon which all the worship above stands. And beneath it, scrolls. Thousands of them, rolled tightly, stacked loosely. Some glow faintly, others are faded, all are sealed. These are the prayers, the petitions, the cries of those who asked before answers were available. He kneels. You never thought you'd see that Jesus kneeling in heaven. Not from subservience, but from intimacy. This is not him kneeling before power. This is him kneeling before history. He touches the nearest scroll, and it opens not with a crack but a sigh. You feel the words inside, as if they're being whispered directly into your soul. A father in Babylon begging for his children's safety. A girl in Egypt weeping for the coming of a deliverer. A shepherd in ancient hills pleading for forgiveness. You don't just hear their words, you feel the hope in them. Some believe these scrolls are metaphors. Others believe they're literal records kept by angels assigned to each soul. But right now you believe they're real, because Jesus reads each one with the focus of a savior who promised he would. As he opens a third scroll, a small smile crosses his face. Then he speaks so softly you barely catch it. She thought I didn't hear her. A pause. I did. The scrolls begin to glow more brightly now, responding to his voice like thirsty roots absorbing rain. One by one they unfold not upward, but inward, as if being absorbed back into the divine memory that birthed them. You look back toward the souls lining the room. Their eyes are now open, still silent, but watching. Jesus stands, and for a moment you see everything, a savior who descended not just to defeat death, but to honor every question ever asked in faith. He didn't come down here to erase suffering. He came to collect it, to carry it upward with him, to let no cry go unanswered, even if the answer came wrapped in silence for centuries. And now the chamber begins to change. Not crumble, not fade. Shift, like a dream completing its arc. Jesus turns. He doesn't say it aloud, but you feel the meaning. We're not finished. No, this is only the underlayer. Beneath the altar lies honor. Above it awaits the next revelation. You rise with him, not in flight, but in gravity-defying reverence. The chamber beneath the altar folds quietly behind you, not closing but sealing like a holy whisper being tucked away for safekeeping. The souls you passed, those watchers of the promise, do not vanish. They wait. Not forgotten, not delayed, just perfectly timed. Now Jesus steps forward again, back into a hall, suspended not in space, but in understanding. It widens as he moves like creation itself, making room. And here the elders gather. Not the seraphim, not the saints, asleep beneath the altar, these are the heavenly elders. Known in some traditions as the 24, these ancient figures are draped in robes that reflect not fabric, but testimony. Light dances on them as though each thread holds a piece of divine history. They do not speak as Jesus enters. They simply rise, and behind them, far behind them, stars begin to appear. Not above you, but around you, hanging in place, humming with silent brilliance. And you realize this isn't a hallway. It's a council chamber strung across the edge of the cosmos. One elder steps forward. His robe bears the faint image of a lion, faded but still roaring in spirit. His voice is deep, not in tone but in weight, like it has been waiting too long to be used. "We have waited," he says. Jesus nods, just once. Another elder, her robe etched with symbols that feel like psalms sung underwater, speaks gently. "You remember them all." Jesus replies, "Even the ones who forgot me." You're not sure if you're supposed to be hearing this, but heaven doesn't push you back. Tonight you're a guest in every sense of the word, invited to witness, not to interpret. And so you listen. The council forms a wide circle and Jesus steps into its center. No throne, no ceremony, just the king and his elders, ancient ones whose eyes carry both millennia of waiting and awe of what they now see. One elder lifts a hand, a gesture, not a command. The stars behind them shimmer, and in that glow you see reflections forming. Visions, memories, maybe both. Moments from earth. A woman pouring perfume over Jesus' feet. A thief gasping, "Remember me." A storm stilled by 3 words. A manger filled not just with straw, but eternity wrapped in flesh. These scenes don't play like movies. They live in the light, projected not for drama, but as record. Truth uncoiling gently into the celestial air. Some of the elders bow their heads. Others weep silently. One hand, calloused like a fisherman, raises both arms in a gesture that is neither praise nor surrender, but recognition. Jesus lets the light flow. He doesn't explain himself. He doesn't justify the cross. He simply lets the truth speak for itself. And then a tremor. Not violent, not alarming. Just enough to let every soul, every elder, every star in that vast chamber know something is changing. You feel it ripple through you like cool water under your skin. A shift, like the air remembering an old tune. Jesus turns not toward the council, but toward a small alcove to the right. It isn't grand. In fact, it looks like a quiet library one, so ancient the scrolls have long since turned to radiant dust. And inside it, one presence lingers. Familiar, cloaked in purpose. Jesus steps in, and you follow into the smallest room you've seen in heaven so far. And in its center stands a figure. Tall, broad, cloaked not in mystery, but in clarity. He holds a sword, but he does not raise it. This is Gabriel, the messenger, the voice, the one who spoke to Mary, who warned Joseph, who whispered names into the ears of trembling prophets. He stands silently, but you can feel his heart beating not out of fear, but of reverence. His sword, so long used to defend and declare, now rests in both hands, point down. He studies Jesus' face for a long moment. Then finally, with hesitation, he speaks. "Shall I speak again, my lord?" Jesus answers not with a yes, not with a no, with a smile. "Not yet." And you sense it, Gabriel is not being silenced. He is being asked to wait, to hold the next great announcement a little longer. Because what is coming must first pass through the stillness of the grave, and then rise. Gabriel nods. The sword remains lowered. A soldier at ease before the one who needs no protection. There's a moment, quiet, reverent, where even Gabriel's wings tremble slightly. You almost forget to breathe. And then Jesus turns again, this time toward the outer edge of the chamber. He's moving forward, but now slower. As if the next step requires more than power, it requires love. Gabriel remains behind. And you You walk forward into the next realm, where time begins to bend. You follow Jesus into a space that doesn't feel like heaven anymore, at least not in the way you've just seen. It's quieter here, dimmer. Not in sadness, but in stillness, as though this layer of eternity hasn't been touched for a very long time. There are no thrones, no angels, no sound. Just a long corridor of silence, thick with anticipation and something else. Restraint. You've entered a forbidden room, but only forbidden to those who are not him. Even the light behaves differently here. It does not shine, it waits. The walls aren't made of light or cloud, but something older, woven essence, the first material God ever breathed into form. Everything here feels like it's been holding its breath since before Eden bloomed. And at the far end of the chamber, a door, not ornate, not glorious, just final. It hums, not with power, but with permission. It is the kind of door no one can open, not even angels, unless they bear both authority and suffering. Jesus approaches it with steady steps. His spirit leaves no footprint, but his presence leaves a mark on the very air, like gravity folding around purpose. As he nears the door, you notice a strange phenomenon. It begins to unmake itself. Not open, unmake. As if it's not being unlocked, but unneeded. The closer he gets, the more it dissolves, not in destruction, but in surrender. And beyond it, a room with no light source, but full of illumination. You step in behind him and immediately you feel it. This is the oldest room in heaven. No angel has entered here, no prophet has seen it in visions, no theologian has imagined it correctly. This chamber predates the earth, predates stars, predates even the fall. It was built for one moment only. This one. Jesus walks to its center, where a dais rises, a small platform, smooth and unadorned. Unlike anything else you've seen, it bears no symbols. It doesn't need to. This place is too old for symbols. It simply is. And resting atop the dais is something you did not expect. A stone. Small, gray, ordinary, but somehow heavier than all creation. Jesus reaches for it not with command, but with compassion. And as his fingers touch the stone, it splits without cracking, without breaking. It simply parts in two, like an obedient heart. Inside is not light, not glory, not judgment, but a single word. You don't see it with your eyes. You know it with your soul. That word is the true name of death. Not the idea, not the metaphor, the actual spiritual name of the force humanity fears most. It's quiet, not evil, not cruel, just unfinished. And Jesus, he doesn't destroy it. He absorbs it with a breath, not a gasp, not a sigh. He inhales the name and the stone melts back into unity, whole again, lighter now. He sets it down. And for the first time you understand, Jesus didn't come to fight death. He came to understand it from the inside out. This room, the hidden chamber beneath heaven, wasn't a prison for death. It was a waiting room. And Jesus was always the one meant to enter and escort it out. Behind you, something shifts. You turn and there, half lit by the ambient glow of the chamber, stands Adam. He has followed. His presence is less weighty now, like he's been unburdened. He looks at Jesus and says only one word, finally. You feel that word hit every generation like a bell rung through bloodlines. Jesus gives a quiet nod. He doesn't explain, he doesn't teach. He simply turns to Adam and holds out a hand. And for a breathless moment you see it, the first man and the second, the one who fell and the one who lifted, the echo and the word. They do not embrace, they do not speak again, but in that moment something sacred passes between them. Closure. Adam fades, not vanishes, just recedes, his purpose fulfilled in witnessing this moment. You turn back to the stone. It is still, silent, but no longer heavy. Some believe death is the end of all stories. Others think it is the doorway to everything. But tonight you've seen the truth. Death is not the end. It is a room Jesus once entered, so no one else would ever have to enter it alone. You feel that truth settle in your spirit like warm light through a stained glass window. And as Jesus exits the room, you follow, knowing you've just witnessed the most hidden chamber in all of existence. The door behind you dissolves back into the fabric of heaven, not slammed shut, not locked away, but gently absorbed, like a chapter concluded in a much larger story. You step again onto the pathway where silence drapes itself over everything, but now it feels lighter. Not empty, but freed. Jesus moves ahead and you notice the change. He doesn't carry the weight of the stone anymore. He never really did not as a burden. But now there's a fresh clarity to his steps, a gentle certainty. Like a thread has been tied back into the loom of eternity, and then a figure appears. Not formed by light, but shadow and memory. He is not made of the same glory as the angels. He carries no crown. His robe is coarse, familiar, earth-like. He stands tall but humble. You recognize him somehow, not by face, by presence. He is Adam, but not the Adam from the altar, not the one who looked back in longing. This Adam is different. He is complete. He walks slowly toward Jesus as if time itself is still catching up with this meeting. And then the moment comes, they stand face to face. The first man, the last Adam. No introductions are needed. Adam reaches out his hand, trembling slightly, not from fear, but from reverence. Jesus meets it. Their hands touch. And as they do, something washes over the entire space, a wave of healing. You feel it in your spirit. A memory that doesn't belong to you flashes across your heart. A garden, a voice, a choice, a fall. And now, a restoration. No words pass between them. But what happens in that touch reshapes history. Not forward, but backward. The fall still occurred. The exile still happened. But now it's as though the wound has found its medicine. Adam steps back, eyes wet. He says quietly to Jesus, "I thought I had ruined everything." Jesus replies, soft, unshaken, "You began everything." Some believe Adam wandered in regret through the afterlife. Others suggest he was kept in silence, his story paused. But tonight you've seen him stand not as a warning, but as a witness. Jesus places a hand on his shoulder. Adam bows, not from shame, but from relief. Then he fades once again, not lost, but released. You continue forward with Jesus. The air shifts again, less dense now. The deeper you go, the more heaven feels like it's inhaling. And soon you approach a chamber unlike the others. Not grand, not veiled in glory, but filled with fire. Not destructive flame-living fire, gentle, gold-hued, a fire that does not consume but reveals. This is the chamber of the flame that doesn't burn. Jesus steps into it without hesitation. You follow and immediately feel it wash over you. It's warm, so warm, but not hot. It touches your soul, not your skin. This fire does not destroy. It illuminates. You look around and in the fire you see stories, real ones. Burning within the flame, you witness a shepherd singing psalms to calm his sheep, a woman cradling a baby she didn't think she could have, a boy with a sling and a giant in front of him, a prophet writing scrolls by candlelight with shaking hands. They burn in the fire, but they are not devoured. Jesus walks through these flames, untouched, of course he is. But what startles you is this: you walk through too. The fire doesn't hurt you. It knows you. Because this fire remembers faith. It burns with trust, not judgment. Somewhere to your right, a shape moves. An angel, eyes like coals, wings like flame, watches you pass. He nods once, then vanishes. This flame is not tended. It tends itself. And now Jesus steps to the center and the fire gathers around him like old friends returning home. You see it swirl upward, wrapping him in light, yet still leaving him visible. He lifts his hands, not high, just out. And the flame shifts again. Now it reveals something else. The future. You catch glimpses, subtle and fragile. A child hearing the name Jesus for the first time. A mother praying over a crib in the dark. A dying man whispering a prayer from memory. A teenager closing their eyes in a hotel room and finally letting go of their anger. These moments flicker in the flame. They haven't happened yet, but they will. And Jesus sees them all. Because this fire is not about past glory. It's about faith to come. He smiles softly and the fire quiets. You stand there amazed. Some believe heaven is all choirs and crowns. But here you've walked with the one who built a fire that remembers and waits. Not a consuming fire, a refining one. And as the chamber dims, Jesus turns again, this time toward a soft hallway lined with wind. You're not sure how you'll follow, but he looks over his shoulder and gives you that quiet smile again. As if to say, "You've made it this far, let's keep going." The flame recedes like a tide returning to its holy ocean. Not extinguished, just satisfied. You exhale, though you hadn't realized you'd been holding your breath. That fire didn't scorch, it searched, and still somehow you feel lighter. Jesus steps forward into the hallway ahead, and now you hear it wind. Not the kind that rustles leaves or howls through mountaintops. This is sacred breath. It moves with intention, like spirit exhaled from the mouth of God. The corridor curves gently, carved not by tools, but by movement, divine footsteps, long forgotten winds of old promises, prayers answered before they were spoken aloud. As you walk, the air brushes past you like a memory trying to return, and then a figure blocks the path. Tall, radiant. His armor shimmers like the surface of a sword just drawn. His wings, wide and fierce, are folded behind him like thunder on standby. This is Michael, the Archangel, General of Heaven, Protector of the Eternal Throne, Slayer of Dragons, Sentinel of Celestial Order. And now, A man standing silently before the risen but not yet resurrected Christ. You expect them to exchange orders, strategy, commands. Instead, Michael hesitates. His hand rests lightly on the hilt of his great sword, but it doesn't move. You can see it, the tension in his brow, the calculation in his stance, as if he's waiting for a sign. Jesus doesn't speak. He just walks closer. Michael doesn't stop him, but he doesn't kneel either, not yet. Then Jesus does something unexpected. He extends his hand, palm upward. You can still see the wound, fresh, glowing. And in that wound, Michael sees it too, the proof of a battle he was never asked to fight. Slowly, slowly. The archangel removes his hand from the sword. He lowers his head and kneels. His wings fold forward, covering his frame in reverent humility. The same warrior who cast Lucifer down now bows to a king crowned by nails, not thrones. Jesus touches his shoulder just briefly, and the air changes. The wind shifts again, not in direction, but in tone. A deep warmth rolls through the corridor like a memory unfolding. You understand now this wasn't a moment of authority. It was recognition. Michael wasn't waiting for orders. He was waiting to see the wounds. Because here in the heart of heaven, victory doesn't come by force. It comes by faithfulness. Some traditions depict Michael as heaven's loudest trumpet, the first to charge when evil rises. But tonight you've seen his silence, and it speaks louder than any war cry ever could. He rises only when Jesus nods. There is no shame, only understanding. Then Michael steps aside. You move forward again. The corridor widens. The wind softens. It no longer brushes past you like a stranger. It welcomes you now. You feel it swirling gently around your feet like an invisible river of spirit. And then you step out of the corridor and into a room unlike any before. It isn't grand. It's still. A domed space of warm light and no angles. There's no throne, no altar, no angels. Just time slowing to make space for grief. You feel it immediately. The weight in the air. Not despair. Not sorrow. Grief. But holy grief. The kind that doesn't collapse. The kind that knows what resurrection is, but still remembers what loss feels like. Jesus stands in the center. Here even heaven pauses for the Son of God to feel everything. The betrayal, the mockery, the suffocation, the final breath. Not to relive it, but to honor it. You see it in his eyes. Not pain acknowledgement. He remembers every name, every hand that struck him, every heart that broke watching him fall, and he lets it be felt. Because even in glory, the human experience is not erased. It is carried, gently, lovingly, permanently. Somewhere in the quiet, you hear a faint sound. You turn. A small harp resting alone on a pedestal plays itself. A single note, over and over. It's the melody of mourning, but tonight, it is also the key of healing. You look to Jesus and something unexpected catches your eye. A tear. One tear. It rolls down his cheek and drops silently to the floor. Where it touches, a lily blooms. White, whole, radiant. He smiles not in joy but in peace. Some believe Jesus left pain behind the moment he said, "It is finished." Others believe he ascended untouched by emotion. But tonight, you've seen the truth. He carries it, not as burden, but as proof of his love. He turns toward the exit of the chamber, and with each step, the lily at his feet glows brighter. You follow the air still wrapped in reverent hush, and just before he passes beyond the veil of this sacred stillness, you hear a voice, not his, not yours, heaven itself maybe. Even God paused to feel. You carry those words with you into the next hallway, where something ancient waits just beyond the veil of memory. The hallway ahead hums like a string drawn tight, the kind of tension that doesn't come from fear but from purpose. Something awaits. You don't know what, but he does. Jesus steps calmly, and the light around him dims, not into darkness, but into focus. It's as if heaven itself knows this part must be seen clearly. And then up ahead, a presence approaches. You feel it before you see it, sharp, pure, heavy. It's not the Father, not Michael, not Gabriel. This is Gabriel's equal. You've entered the watch point of heaven's general, the sword bearer, the mourning warrior, the one who draws lines and dares all of creation to cross them. He waits beside a narrow bridge made of nothing but obedience. The path is weightless, suspended across a canyon of formless time. On the other side, the halls of deeper purpose glimmer, but you cannot reach them without passing him. And there he stands. You recognize him instantly, not because you've seen him, but because every story about divine war carries his echo. This is the angel known to the ancients as the Flaming Sentinel. No name given, no name needed. He holds a blade of light, its edge so thin it looks like a thought sharpened to a whisper. His armor pulses not with decoration, but with past battles, victories that left scars. and as Jesus approaches, something astonishing happens. The angel hesitates. His hand tightens around the blade. His feet don't move. Jesus steps closer, no words yet, no expression. And still the angel does not lower his sword. He's not defying, he's deciding. You feel the moment sharpen around you like wind before a storm. Even heaven holds its breath. And then the angel kneels. He drops to one knee blade, still upright, eyes downcast. But there's something else in his posture, something unexpected. Regret. You feel it ripple off him like warm thunder, and now you understand. This angel, this eternal defender, almost refused his task once. Not out of rebellion, but out of confusion. Long ago, when the plan was whispered into eternity, when angels were first told the son would bleed, suffer, and die, this one struggled. Not in pride, in heartbreak. He believed he was made to protect God's glory, and yet he was asked to stand by as the son was pierced. Some say angels cannot question, but tonight you see it. Even angels wrestle with obedience. Jesus steps beside him and gently places a hand on his shoulder. There are no words, but the sword lowers, and so does the guilt. It evaporates, not erased but redeemed. This angel rises slowly. You see in his eyes something new, peace, the kind that only comes from being forgiven before you even asked. Jesus nods once. The angel steps aside. The bridge clears, and you realize you're not just watching reconciliation, you're walking through it. You step out onto the bridge behind Jesus. It doesn't sway, it doesn't creak. It holds because it was built on something stronger than architecture. It was built on trust. Halfway across, you glance down, not into darkness, but into unformed time. Below you, you see possible versions of history, what could have happened if the son had chosen not to obey. A world still spinning, a veil still closed, a humanity still sleeping in shadow. And in that terrifying glimpse, you understand something deeply. This wasn't just a death, it was a decision. Jesus didn't fall into the cross. He walked to it, then walked through it. And now you walk with him. The bridge ends. You step into a soft, misty corridor, and behind you, the flaming sentinel disappears into silence, not exiled, not dismissed, but completed. And ahead, the air begins to pulse again. Not with music, with memory. You're not done. But this moment, the angel who almost refused is now folded into the quiet victory you're witnessing. Some believe obedience is blind. Others think it's easy for those made of light. But tonight, you've seen the truth. Even the highest bow to wounds, not out of fear, but because those wounds mean something. Jesus moves on, and the mist parts like the first morning. Ahead, something waits. Not a throne, not a room, a reminder. One he must visit before the final ascent. The mist curls softly as you walk, folding away, like breath exhaled from heaven itself. There are no walls now, no ceiling, just an open stillness shaped by memory and presence. And Jesus walks through it quietly, as if retracing a path only he can see. The space begins to shift not by motion, but by feeling. The air grows thick with something you can't quite name. Not sadness, not fear. It's love with a weight. And then you smell it. Olive oil, crushed leaves, damp earth, Gethsemane. You're not on earth, not truly. And yet the entire garden is here, remembered into being. It's not a copy, but a memory so vivid it lives. The ground is uneven, the stones are cool, and the trees twist upward, silver green and ancient, their branches raised like trembling hands in the dark. Jesus pauses. You know this place. He's been here before, and so have you in story and scripture, maybe even in your own quiet moments of surrender. But tonight you are here in spirit, walking beside him as he returns to the garden after the cross. Not to weep, but to remember. He kneels at the same spot where blood once mingled with sweat, where heaven's silence was louder than the soldier's footsteps. He touches the soil, and suddenly you feel it all. The prayers he whispered under those trees, the loneliness that wrapped him like a second robe, the plea not to suffer, followed by the surrender to do it anyway. Not my will but yours. The words echo not just in the air, but in the fabric of this place. The olive trees remember. Their roots hum with holy memory. You feel it too. This is where the cross was truly chosen. Not nailed, not lifted, chosen. Some say Gethsemane was a moment of weakness. Others call it sacred submission. But now you see it for what it really was. The first step of resurrection. Because before Jesus ever conquered death, he conquered himself. And even now, after the suffering, after the tomb, he comes back here. Not because he must, but because he wants to honor the yes that saved the world. He stands slowly, wipes the soil from his fingers, but not all of it. Some stays. And you understand he's not trying to be clean. He's bringing the garden with him. Because what happened here is part of the gospel. This was the holy hesitation, the pause before the plunge, the moment when heaven waited on a man who was also God to say yes. Jesus steps through the garden and it shifts as he moves, not fading, but easing back into timelessness. The trees lower their branches like bowing saints. You walk beside him and the scent of crushed olives clings to the air. It doesn't smell like sorrow, it smells like offering. At the edge of the garden, a shape waits in the fog. You tense at first, expecting perhaps a Roman figure, a betrayer, a ghost from the trial. But it's none of those. It's a woman, eyes wide, cloak pulled tight around her, kneeling. You recognize her heart before you know her name. It's Hannah, the one who cried silent prayers in the temple, the mother of Samuel, the woman whose lips moved, but whose voice was hidden until God heard. She looks at Jesus, no words, but her expression is one of pure understanding. She knows what it's like to cry in the dark and be heard. She rises slowly, hands pressed together, and steps aside as Jesus walks by. She came to witness this moment, the Savior returning to where surrender first bloomed. As you follow, another figure flickers nearby. David, the psalmist, the one who sang of weeping nights and joyful mornings. He too stands silent. He doesn't sing. Not here. Here, even songs would interrupt the weight of memory. Somewhere in the fog, a soft voice speaks. Not to you, not from you. Just a whisper suspended in spirit. Even the Son of God came back to the place where he cried. Jesus reaches the end of the garden, and the mist thickens one final time before it parts completely. The olive branches bend behind you. The soil remembers. And now, so do you. This wasn't just the Garden of Agony, it was the altar of surrender. And Jesus, having returned, carries that moment forward not as a scar, but as a vow. He doesn't look back, not because he's forgotten, but because the moment is complete. And ahead, the next room glows faintly. The veil between heaven and waiting souls grows thinner. The journey continues. But the scent of Gethsemane follows you like a whisper that changed history. The glow ahead is gentle golden, almost like candlelight flickering just beyond vision. You follow Jesus as he steps out of the memory of Gethsemane and into something entirely different, a chamber full of waiting souls. It's quiet here, not the silence of emptiness, the silence of adoration. You feel it instantly, worship so deep it doesn't need a sound. The room stretches in soft curves, no corners, no hard lines, just a sanctuary that holds the reverence of forgotten time. And they are here, the saints. Not the ones whose names echo through sermons and stained glass, but the unremembered faithful. Men and women whose lives never made it into scripture, who lived in obscurity and died with only hope as their monument. They sit cross-legged on radiant stone, kneel with their faces lifted in quiet awe. Some hold children, others clutch symbols, simple things, a seed, a lamp, a thread. They are not restless, they are resting, and yet something in them begins to stir, because he has entered. You feel the shift ripple through them, not a startle, not fear, just a slow awakening of the heart. One by one they lift their heads, and every single eye locks onto Jesus. He doesn't raise his hands. He doesn't speak. He simply stands in their midst, wounded, whole silent scene. A child stands first, barefoot, dust on his cheeks, a small bundle of sticks under one arm. His eyes are wide, his face shines. Then an old man, stooped, slow-moving, rises with a whisper on his lips. He's here. A woman in the back begins to cry, not the broken kind, but the overwhelming joy that only the soul understands. And then they begin to rise. Not all at once, but steadily, like flowers opening at dawn. You feel something deep and unspoken swell in your chest. You are witnessing a homecoming. These are the ones who believed but never saw, who prayed but never received, who died still waiting but never let go. And tonight the waiting ends. Jesus walks among them. His hands still carry the wounds. Some reach out not to touch, but just to be closer. To know that the one they whispered to in the dark really did come. A woman with clay on her hands kneels beside him and breathes, "I knew you'd come." He doesn't reply, but he looks at her with such kindness you wonder if the stars might be jealous. He stops near a man whose robe is patched and worn. The man's beard is wild, his eyes alert. You sense he lived in a cave, ate wild food, prayed when others forgot how. Jesus touches his shoulder and nods. The man weeps, softly, and nearby a group begins to sing. Not words, just tones, like wind through reeds, like water dancing on stone. It is worship with no lyrics, the sound of hearts finally satisfied. You notice now a small alcove in the chamber, dimly lit, easy to miss. Jesus turns to it. Inside, seated alone, is a young woman, maybe 17, maybe older, you can't tell. She's holding a torn parchment close to her chest. As he enters, she looks up, not afraid, not surprised, just radiant. Jesus kneels before her, and she speaks first. "It was always you." He nods, and she places the parchment in his hands. It's blank now. The ink faded with time, but you feel it held a prayer. One she wrote, one she died before seeing answered. And now, she doesn't need an answer. She has him. Some scholars believe the cloud of witnesses watches only the living, but tonight you've seen the other side. The faithful waiting quietly on the edge of heaven, finally standing not in reward, but in relationship. Jesus exits the alcove and turns one final time to the crowd. They do not cheer, they do not bow, they rest. Because now their story is fulfilled, and yours continues. As you follow Jesus out of the chamber, the saints remain behind, not trapped, not forgotten, but at peace. A final whisper follows you as the chamber fades. He remembered the ones no one else did. And now a new hallway opens ahead. Not brighter, not louder, but filled with something you hadn't yet felt. Promise. Jesus walks forward. You walk with him. And somewhere ahead, the unseen gate prepares to reveal itself. The air shifts again. As Jesus moves forward, the space around you begins to stretch, not wider, not taller, but deeper. You're no longer moving through places. You're moving through layers of meaning. And now the light ahead carries a softness you haven't felt before. Not the bold blaze of glory, not the weight of grief, but a hush of grace. You step into the next chamber, and immediately you feel it. This place breathes. It doesn't glow, it doesn't thunder. It inhales gently like it was asleep for centuries and is now waking to a familiar scent. The room is open, quiet, gently curved like the inside of a sheltering wing. And seated throughout it are souls. They are not standing. They are not weeping. They are worshiping, but not with sound, with stillness. These are the forgotten saints, the ones whose names didn't echo in scriptures or stories, the faithful in places no one ever wrote down, widows in small villages, servants who prayed in secret, outcasts who believed anyway. And even now they make no demands. They simply look at Jesus and smile. You've never seen smiles like this. They're not happy. They're whole. Jesus walks slowly among them, not grandly, not as a king surveying subjects, but as a shepherd among friends. Some reach out to touch his robe not because they must, but because they can now. A man whose hands are scarred from years of work lifts them slowly, then folds them again. He doesn't need to speak. His life already did. A blind girl, radiant in spirit, turns her face toward Jesus. She smiles before he speaks, because she knew his voice before she ever saw his face. And Jesus kneels beside her. He whispers something only she hears. You will never know what it was. And that's exactly as it should be. A few feet away, a group gathers, young, old, in between. Different languages, different centuries, but they all carry one thing: quiet faith. The kind that doesn't shout, that doesn't write books, that doesn't trend, but endures. Some scholars say heaven is populated by the martyrs, the mighty, the miraculous. But tonight you see that it's also filled with those who simply trusted, day after day, year after year, without applause. One woman holds a child to her chest. She looks at Jesus with tired eyes and says softly, "I raised him on promises I could only hope were true." Jesus smiles and replies even more softly, "You raised him with faith I never forgot." And now the child, grown in eternity, rises beside her. He had died young, but here he is whole, and still hers. Somewhere in the back of the room, an elderly man lifts a candle that never burned out. He holds it forward as Jesus passes, and the flame shifts, not brighter, just steadier. This is the heaven of the overlooked, of the quiet victories, of the prayers whispered between laundry and hunger and second shifts. These souls were never famous, but they were faithful, and heaven remembers faithfulness more than fame. Jesus stops in the center of the room and turns in a slow circle. He doesn't raise his voice, but you feel it, every soul here hears him. I never missed a moment of your lives. I never forgot a single act of love. I never wasted your tears. And with that, the entire room exhales. Not relief, not surprise, but completion. It's as if every question they ever carried melted in his presence. Not because they were answered, but because they no longer needed to be. You glance around. There are no crowns here, no thrones, no golden medals or harp-filled platforms. Just lives lived well and quietly, and now rewarded not with mansions, but with presence. Jesus bows his head. They bow theirs, and then in perfect understanding, he turns toward the exit. No one follows. They don't need to. Their journey ended long ago, but yours continues. And as you walk with him out of the room, One last whisper brushes your spirit. Sometimes the greatest faith is the kind that nobody sees, except God. Ahead, a gentle shimmer begins to pulse across the corridor wall like a curtain in wind. You're near the gate now, the one only Jesus can see. The shimmer ahead pulses faintly, gentle, rhythmic, like a heartbeat in starlight. Jesus slows his pace, not out of weariness but precision. Every movement now carries the weight of prophecy folding into fulfillment. You step beside him as he approaches the invisible edge, and then you see it, a gate. But not like any you've imagined. It isn't gilded or towering. It doesn't swing or creak or shine. It's hidden, not locked, not guarded, veiled. You wouldn't have noticed it if he hadn't turned his face toward it. The gate exists only because he knows where it is. You squint. There is no keyhole, no inscription. Only an almost imperceptible ripple in the spiritual atmosphere, like air deciding whether or not to become light. Jesus raises his hand, no grand gesture, just a single touch. And the veil over the gate dissolves. It doesn't break, it doesn't resist. It recognizes, because this gate, this impossibly sacred doorway was made for him, and him alone. You realize something startling? This passage is older than Eden, older than sin, older than the stars themselves. It was woven into the foundations of heaven as an exit route only one soul could ever take after descending below before rising again. And that soul is standing in front of it now. He steps forward and so do you. And for the briefest, breathless moment you pass through the veil together. What waits on the other side is nothing. Not emptiness. Stillness. You are in a place where sound hasn't yet been spoken, where light is still deciding whether to shine, where time waits like a servant standing still at the edge of an eternal command. This is the place between the final veil between suffering and resurrection, and here you are allowed to see what no angel has ever glimpsed, the spiritual threshold of return. Jesus stands in the center of the space and something begins to emerge. Not a being, not a vision, a voice. It's not words. It's a summons. Not loud, not forced, but deeper than sound. And Jesus listens. The summons grows. It doesn't come from above or beyond, it comes from within. A calling issued before he left heaven. A calling to return, but not as he left. He came down as word. He will rise as proof. This gate is the final turn before that return. And now you see it clearly. The only way back is not through power. It is through wounds. The path forward doesn't shine. It glows. Dimly, honestly, beautifully. And Jesus takes one step toward it. You pause. This moment doesn't belong to you. You are allowed to watch, but not to pass. You stand at the edge of the threshold while he moves into the space beyond a space, shaped like promise fulfilled. And suddenly a sound. Not a trumpet, not a shout. A rush of waters. You hear it swell not outside you, but within you, as if your soul itself is responding to him. The voice of the waters. It rises from creation itself, oceans, rivers, rainfall, blood. All things made liquid now recognize their maker. They sing not in melody, but in motion. The water calls him back. Return to the body that bore the pain. Return to the earth that watched you die. Return to the ones still waiting in graves, in prayers, in rooms full of aching silence. The summons is growing stronger. Jesus turns not to you, but toward the light now beginning to split the stillness ahead. And he smiles, not with triumph, but with knowing. He steps into the center of the stillness. The gate closes behind him, not locked, completed. Some believe resurrection begins in the tomb. Others say it begins at the moment breath returns. But now, you know, it begins here. At the gate only Jesus could see, and only Jesus could pass. As he fades into the ascent, the veil settles behind him, like calm waters closing around a boat. You stand in silence, and then a voice, soft, inside you. He found the gate so you would never have to. The veil ripples one last time, then fades like morning mist touched by light. Jesus has passed beyond it into motion, into resurrection, but you remain just behind, suspended in the hush he left behind. And yet something stirs, not where he went, but beneath your feet. A gentle vibration as if the foundation of heaven itself is echoing with life, not shaking in warning, singing in welcome. You look around. The stillness begins to dissolve, slowly, reverently, and from the very edge of existence a sound rises. Water, not dripping, not crashing, flowing, speaking. A stream emerges not from a riverbed, but from light itself. It curves upward and outward, impossibly fluid, like time unfolding in liquid form. It winds toward you, surrounding you, though it never touches your skin. It flows through you, not around you like a song remembered mid-dream. And it's singing, You recognize the sound not in tone but in truth. This is the voice of the waters. It's not just a metaphor. It's not just poetic language. It's a real entity. And it is calling him back. Jesus, now moving beyond the veil of heaven's last mystery, is entering that sacred flow, the river that flows from the throne and back again, touching creation with every loop. And you are allowed to witness what few ever imagined possible, creation itself responding to its creator. The water swells with joy, not loud, but cosmic. You hear it echo in the stars. You feel it pulse through the breath of trees still rooted in forgotten forests. You see it dance across the surface of oceans not yet named by man. This is the original worship, before choirs, before languages, before light. The water remembered him, and it calls him now. You catch fragments of the hymn, not words, but ideas that fall into your heart like petals. Welcome back, wounded one. You were the wave, the flood, the fountain. We bore witness to the Jordan and now to glory. You see it clearly now? The voice of the waters doesn't just call him. It carries him, not like a tide rushing a body, but like a throne lifting a king. Jesus stands within that current eyes-closed arms, lowered as if absorbing every molecule of creation's joy. His wounds glow not in pain, but in completion. Water spirals upward, and you watch breathless as something extraordinary happens. Every drop reflects a moment. You see, the river that parted for Moses, the storm that obeyed his voice, the water turned to wine at Cana, the well where a Samaritan woman met eternity. Each droplet contains a reminder he never left creation unattended. Even now, heaven's river holds the memory of every miracle. And Jesus, he remembers them all. Some say water cannot speak, but you've just heard it testify. It didn't just remember his works. It remembered him. He begins to rise now, not by wings, not by fire, but by flow. The waters wrap around his feet, then his hands lifting, not dragging. And he ascends slowly, as if caught in the breath between time and timelessness. As he moves upward, the river splits, not in protest, but in path. One stream continues toward Earth. The other moves outward, farther toward galaxies that have never known his name, but will. And you are suspended in awe, because now you understand, heaven and earth are not separated by space, but by awareness. And tonight even the waters are aware. A final swell rises. The voice whispers not in your ear, but deep within your chest. He passed through the waters again, not to be baptized, but to bring the flood of grace to all who thirst. Then the river calms. The shimmer fades. The chamber is still, and Jesus is gone. Not lost, not missing, just moving, heading toward the body that once held his spirit, toward the tomb that no longer has the right to keep him. And as you stand in the lingering glow of the voice that once hovered over creation's first, deep a final whisper brushes across your heart. From water he came, and to water he returned to call you home. You remain still for a long moment, not because you're told to, but because everything within you insists. The water has quieted, the voice has faded, and now all that remains is a silence so deep, it listens to you. Then a flicker, not of light, not of movement, a glance. Jesus has reappeared, but not ahead, above, not floating in brilliance or seated on some ethereal throne, but standing at the threshold of presence on a ledge not made of stone or spirit, but recognition. And from there he looks, at the throne, at heaven, at the path he just traveled. And then just once at the Father, you feel the moment before you see it, because no eye, no being, no created thing has ever truly captured what this is. The glance. Jesus the Son lifts his face, and the Father, the One enthroned beyond sight, beyond definition, looks back. Just once, but it contains everything. There are no words. There is no thunder. But in that exchange you see creation, suffering, love, surrender, completion, joy. The kind of joy that doesn't smile or sing because it's too holy for expression. It simply is. Some theologians have tried to imagine what the Father said to the Son after the cross. Others have written pages on what Jesus might have asked upon his return. But now you know, they didn't need to speak. Because this moment is the answer to everything. And somehow in the quiet fire of that glance you feel the truth. He didn't rise alone. Because in that shared gaze between Father and Son you were included. You, the listener, the dreamer, the wanderer who fell asleep tonight hoping for more. Jesus turns back toward the edge. And the Father, he doesn't move. But something happens in his stillness. A ripple invisible yet felt across all realms. As if all of heaven has now adjusted itself to the reality of a wounded risen Savior. You glance behind you and notice, the angels are still, The elders are still, the gates remain closed. Not in rejection, in completion. This was the moment they waited for. The Father looked at the Son, and in that glance he saw you. You stepped forward, slightly drawn, not by curiosity, but by longing. To be closer, to see more. And then you feel something soft brush your foot. You look down. A fold of linen. White, simple, familiar. You bend down and lift it gently. It's not glowing. It's not enchanted. But it is holy, because this is the cloth from the tomb, the one wrapped around Jesus' face. And somehow it's here. Before he returns to the body, before the stone rolls away, this piece, this gentle fragment of his suffering has arrived ahead of him. You hold it for a moment. It's warm. How is it warm? Because it's not just a cloth. It's a reminder, a piece of death that didn't win. Jesus steps past you once more, and again you see it. He walks with scars, not shame. Glory carried in pain. And somewhere behind you, Michael bows again, not from duty this time, from relief. The journey is almost complete. One last descent, one final return. The eyes of heaven watch, and Jesus moves. Some believe the resurrection was a burst of light. Others say it was a whisper in the dark. But now you know, before the stone moved, before the angels arrived, there was a glance, and in it the Father said everything. Without saying a single word, the chamber begins to shift, not collapse, transform. As Jesus moves away from the ledge where the silent glance passed between Father and Son, heaven seems to exhale. Not a sigh of exhaustion, but of completion. The kind of breath you didn't realize you were holding until it's released. You follow, still holding the linen in your hand. It's light, soft, ordinary, and yet it carries a story that bent eternity. Jesus walks with purpose, now faster, but still unhurried. The stillness around him ripples with each step, as if the memories of heaven itself are watching him pass by. Then the hallway darkens, not from absence of light, but the presence of something more ancient. Not evil, not hostile, just heavy. And Jesus enters. This place is quiet, too quiet. Not reverent, not restful, but vacant, like a castle stripped bare. The walls here shimmer with faded glory, like stars long since burnt out. You step into the threshold and the air tightens. There's something here, or rather, someone. The shadows begin to coil and lift like mist, and from them a figure emerges. Not monstrous, not twisted. Beautiful, but wrong. His presence is smooth, polished, practiced, and his smile is too perfect. Lucifer. The name still means light bearer, but the light is cold now. Decorative, empty. He stands tall, elegant, untouched by suffering, untouched by dust. You feel something sharp in the air, not fear. Memory, because this is not a confrontation. This is a recognition. Jesus and Lucifer stand face to face. And for a moment, all of heaven holds its breath again. They say Jesus defeated Satan at the cross, but what few realize is he also remembered him. This is not a battle scene. There is no shouting. Just a quiet stare between the one who fell and the one who descended willingly. Lucifer speaks first. His voice is silk-soaked in venom. You could have come down in fire, he says. Jesus doesn't reply. You could have summoned legions. Still nothing. You could have destroyed me the moment they put the thorns on your head. Jesus just looks at him, and in that look, Lucifer flinches. Because Jesus doesn't answer with anger. He answers with scars. Lucifer's eyes narrow. He looks at the wounds in Jesus' hands, the mark in his side, and he sneers. You think those make you a king? Jesus finally speaks. Only 2 words. They make me yours. Lucifer steps back, not in fear, in something worse. Recognition. Because for all his pride, all his fury, all his ancient twisting of truth, Lucifer cannot argue with that. The Son of God bore wounds for a world, and even for him, and that is unbearable. Not because it hurts, but because it is unmatchable. Lucifer cannot compete with grace. He cannot mimic it. He cannot defeat it, so he vanishes. Not in a burst, in a whisper, because even the enemy knows when he's already lost. Jesus doesn't turn to watch him leave. He doesn't need to. He simply walks forward deeper into the corridor. The walls begin to warm again. The silence softens. Because that meeting, that final unspoken judgment is over. You look back once into the emptiness left behind by that presence, and you feel the truth settle over you like dawn. Even Lucifer's rebellion was answered not with vengeance, but with victory in humility. Some believe hell trembles at the sound of his name. Others think it rages, but now you've seen it. Hell falls silent, not because it's afraid, because it understands it was never the point. Jesus did not come to crush. He came to rescue. And even in the face of the fallen one, he offers the final word. Not a sword, not a threat, but a scar. You walk behind him once more, the hallway now opening into the realm of names and echoes, where voices begin to stir and light returns to the edges of vision. Lucifer is gone. And mercy remains? The corridor behind you fades into stillness, and the cold echo of that ancient meeting lingers like a memory too fragile to touch. But Jesus doesn't linger. He walks ahead, not faster, not slower, just steady, certain, as if his steps are writing a new ending across ground that once knew only silence. Now the walls begin to brighten, not with gold or fire, but with names. Names carved in soft light, stretching high and deep and wide. They glow as if written by breath, not hand, each one pulsing gently, not with fame, but faith. Jesus steps into this next chamber. The light bends around him like a welcome, not blinding, not forced, just ready. You feel the shift. This isn't a hall of trophies. This is the scroll of the sleepers. The faithful who believed before the curtain tore. The ones who trusted when hope was only a whisper. The ones who fell asleep with a promise still hanging unfinished in the air. And now that air is full of him. You glance at the wall beside you. There it is. A name. You've never seen it before, but somehow you know it. A woman from a forgotten tribe, a midwife. She prayed in secret during a famine no one recorded. Her name shines as brightly as Moses, because in this place faith not fame glows. Jesus walks along the names, and you can feel it in the atmosphere they respond to him. Each name flickers a little stronger, like a candle relit as he passes, and he knows them, all of them. You can hear it somehow in the space between seconds, each name being remembered by the one they trusted. A servant who lit lamps in the temple after everyone else had gone. A farmer who hummed psalms to the wind. A girl who hid a scroll under her mattress until the day she died. All of them are here. Some say the book of life is a ledger, a list checked twice. But now you see, it's a memory. A warm, living memory of those who walked by faith and slept in hope. At the center of the room is a pedestal. Upon it, a scroll aged, yet untouched. It glows slightly, not with magic, but with truth. This is the scroll of the sleepers. Jesus steps forward and places his hand on it. The room stills. A low hum rises from the names. Not speech, agreement. Because the one who touches the scroll is the one they were waiting for. He unrolls it, not wide, just enough. And you see the ink glow as if finally activated. Names that were once quiet now shimmer with fulfillment. Not because they earned it, but because he came back for them. You take a step closer and realize some names are incomplete, not missing, still forming, still becoming. You turn to Jesus. He sees your glance and nods softly, because some of those names are still being written. Even now, on earth, in whispers, in bedrooms, in hospitals, in churches, in prisons, in schoolyards, in deserts, in kitchens, faith still flows upward. And this scroll still expands. Jesus gently touches one of the incomplete names. It brightens slightly like a flame catching breath. Then he speaks. Just one sentence. They believed, though they never saw me. The scroll folds closed. The pedestal dims. But the names remain glowing on the walls. He walks forward again toward the chamber's edge. You glance back once, and in doing so feel something deep and permanent settle over your spirit. You are being watched by witnesses who once waited just like you. They see you, not to judge, to cheer. Some believe heaven forgets. Others believe it only remembers the mighty. But now you've seen, heaven remembers the faithful who waited in silence. And now, they are awake. The glow of the names fades gently behind you like candlelight honored and set aside. Jesus moves forward again, his presence guiding you deeper, no longer through places but through layers of fulfillment. The corridor opens gradually into a circular space, warm and bright, humming faintly, not with music, but with wind and fire. The light here flickers, dancing softly against the curved walls, as if the air itself remembers the moment it once bore a chariot. You recognize the feeling even before you see him. A presence enters the room, not walking, but stepping out of movement itself. Elijah, the prophet who never died. He arrives not with thunder, not with announcement, just with clarity, like a breath of desert wind remembered by the soul. He stands tall, older than memory, yet alive in every sense. His robe is dust-stained but whole, and his eyes shine with the kind of wild wisdom that only comes from standing face to face with heaven's fire and living to tell it. And now he stands before Jesus. Neither speaks, but you feel the recognition stretch between them like the distance between mountaintops. Elijah bows not in subservience but in reverence, as if saying, "I burned with zeal, You burned with love. Jesus steps forward, and for the first time in this journey, they speak, but not aloud, spirit to spirit. You don't hear words, you feel understanding. Elijah had seen the glory of God pass by in a whisper. Now he sees the glory of God made flesh. And he smiles, because everything he prophesied, the fire, the drought, the altar soaked and consumed, the voice on the mountain, all of it was always about this moment. Somewhere deep in Elijah's presence, the Jordan River still runs. The mantle still flutters. The whirlwind still echoes. But none of that matters now. Because the one whom the fire always served is standing before him with nail-marked hands and a resurrected soul. Jesus places his palm over Elijah's shoulder, and the fire that once fell at Carmel falls again, not to consume, but to confirm. The chamber bursts briefly with flame, not hot, not wild, just a wave of holy light washing over you, filling the space with confirmation. The prophets did not burn in vain. Then the fire withdraws, and standing beside Elijah are others. You recognize them not by faces, but by spirit. A woman with a jar of flour that never ran out. A prophet who wept over Nineveh. A man who walked naked through the streets of Jerusalem with messages no one wanted to hear. A shepherd who dreamed of wheels within wheels. The prophets. Not thunderous now, not cryptic, just whole, fulfilled. And every eye is fixed on Jesus, not for answers, but in understanding. He was always the message, even when the scrolls were sealed. Even when visions came in riddles, even when the heavens were brass, Jesus steps into the middle of them. He doesn't declare anything. He doesn't teach. He simply stands. And they circle around him, shoulder to shoulder, no longer separated by centuries or symbolism, because what was once scattered prophecy is now gathered presence. The room quiets. A warm breeze rolls through, and with it comes the faint sound of a whisper. And the word became flesh. You feel it settle into your bones. Elijah nods. He turns and looks at you for the first time. His gaze is fierce but gentle, and you feel the message land like a soft thunder. Keep listening, the whisper still speaks. Then the prophets begin to fade, not in finality but in rest. Their work is done. Their voices are now woven into the breath of God's living word. And Jesus turns again, this time toward a narrow hallway with no walls, just space suspended in hush. You follow, but as you do, a part of you remains in that room, where fire didn't burn the flesh. It warmed the promise. The hallway opens like a held breath slowly released. There are no walls now, no structure. Just presence, soft, weightless, expectant. And in this space, there is no color. Not because it's dark, because it's beyond light. You're no longer walking through places or memories. You're moving through meaning. And ahead in the center of this endless hush, Jesus stands still. Then he kneels. Not because he is tired, not because he is weak, because he's being honored. You don't hear singing, you don't hear words, but the reverence is so thick it brushes against your spirit like velvet on glass. And then it happens. You feel it first. A presence rising all around, vast but unseen, powerful but unannounced. And from the edges of this holy silence comes sound. Not a roar, not a chorus, a shoutless hosanna. Heaven begins to worship not with volume, but with stillness so profound it becomes music. The angels do not sing, the stars do not spin, the elders do not cry out, but everything radiates worship, as if the entire cosmos remembers Palm Sunday, where shouts and branches filled the streets, and now answers it back in spirit rather than spectacle. The silence is louder than the crowd ever was. You look at Jesus. He's not on a colt now, not wrapped in blood, not crowned with thorns. But he hasn't picked up a new crown either. He's just here, scarred, present, complete. Somewhere nearby, an angel you hadn't seen before opens its wings slowly, reverently, like a curtain being drawn open in a cathedral no one built. Its wings shimmer. On one side, the sound of a child laughing. On the other, the sound of a tombstone cracking open. And through those wings, you glimpse something no song could ever describe. Worship with no words. Because right now, heaven doesn't need to speak. It only needs to recognize. And in this holy quiet, every being, every soul, every particle of creation turns inward toward one truth. He did it. Not for applause. Not for power. For love. A hush falls again, even deeper than before. Jesus rises from his kneeling posture. And now the stillness itself begins to shift. Not breaking. Unfolding. From above, you see its soft tendrils of light reaching down, forming a path forward. And under your feet, the texture of the floor has changed. It's no longer made of glory or mist or light. It's woven from prayers. Every step you take now rests on the unspoken cries of souls who longed to believe. Jesus looks upward, not toward the throne, toward something deeper. You feel it coming, a wave of what you're not sure. But it moves gently, carrying with it everyone. You hear laughter from places you cannot see. A child once lost, now found. A widow singing in her sleep. A prisoner weeping in a forgotten cell, finding peace in the name he barely dared whisper, Jesus. This wave doesn't wash over you. It pulls you forward. Not into noise, but into the echo of fulfilled prophecy. Somewhere above, a feather falls from an angel's wing. It does not hit the ground. It floats in place, humming with stillness. And all around you, heaven answers Palm Sunday's cry with something better than shouting. It answers with recognition. No palms, no parade. Just the full weight of eternity saying, we see you now. Jesus steps forward once more, and suddenly the quiet that shouted Hosanna rolls back like a scroll. And you see the next place, and the next truth, because one final worship still waits, one that doesn't fall to its knees. It bows at the wound. The scroll of silence rolls away like a wave, and you step into a room that feels immediately heavier. Not oppressive, sacred. It's dim here, lit only by what appears to be stars suspended midair, each one pulsing gently like a heartbeat slowed to a hush. The space breathes, the space waits. And in its center, Michael. He stands again, wings outstretched, not in defense, not in command, but in complete reverence. But this time he is not alone. Arrayed around him are angels of immense power, beings of old, clothed in storm and light, who once warred for the heavens in places too deep for time to name. Now they are all still. They surround a small pedestal. Upon it, nothing. At least that's how it looks. Until you step closer. And then you see it. Not with your eyes, but with your being. A wound. It is not bleeding. It is not fresh. It is not a symbol. It is alive. Suspended, hovering just above the pedestal. The wound. His wound. Not replicated, not imitated, the original. The one in his side. The one that poured out water and blood. The one that ended a spear's mission and began mercy's reign. Somehow this fragment of his suffering is preserved here, not for pain, but for glory. Michael kneels. So do the others. And you feel yourself do the same, not because you were told, but because nothing else makes sense. Jesus steps slowly into the room. He does not look at the angels. He walks straight to the wound and stands over it. Everything else falls away. Even heaven seems to hold back. The wound floats upward just a little, as if recognizing its origin. And then something extraordinary happens. Michael bows his head to the wound, not to the throne, not to the crown, not to the power, but to the scar. Because even the greatest of warriors must kneel not to strength but to love that bleeds. A single phrase rolls through the air, not spoken by voice, but carved into the silence itself. This is what victory looks like, and every angel knows it. You hear soft weeping, not sorrowful but overwhelmed. It comes not from weakness but from worship that has finally run out of words. Jesus places his hand gently beneath the floating wound, and as he does, it glows, not like fire, like memory warmed into light. For a moment, the angels shimmer in that glow. You see one with a jagged scar down his cheek. He touches it reflexively, as if remembering a war he fought under the name of the one he now kneels before. Another carries a horn unblown, its time not yet come. Even it seems to hum in the presence of the scar. Some believe heaven worships perfection. Others think holiness is only found in splendor. But tonight you've seen the deeper truth. Heaven bows where God bled. The wound fades slowly into Jesus again, into his side, as if never separated, never displayed for praise, only for testimony. And when it disappears, Michael lifts his gaze. His face is calm, his hands are open. He speaks only once. You chose this. Jesus does not respond, but his eyes soften, and Michael bows again. Not to the king, but to the Lamb. Because the Lamb, wounded, risen, complete, is the reason all of heaven stands down. You look around the room and realize there are no weapons here, no shields, no banners, only awe. You rise slowly as Jesus turns away from the pedestal, and as he passes, one final echo settles over you. The sword could not save us, only the wound did. The angels remain behind. They are still worshiping, still kneeling, because the glory of heaven bleeds. The room of reverent wounds fades behind you, gently folding into stillness. The echoes remain not in sound, but in weight, like a truth that sinks deeper the longer you carry it. You don't look back. You don't need to. What was shown there will live forever in your soul worship, at the wound power beneath mercy, heaven's warriors bowing not to force but to the scar of love. Now the light changes, not brighter, clearer. As Jesus steps into the next chamber, you sense something shift, not in him, not in heaven, in you. This place feels personal, private, still holy, still vast, but arranged differently, almost as if the room itself was built to contain one moment, one truth, one name. And in the middle of it, a door, simple, closed, framed with ribbons of soft light. Before he touches it, this is the room that holds the new name. Jesus pauses. He places his palm on the center of the door, not to push, not to command, but to acknowledge. Because what's behind this door isn't his to declare, not yet. It is the Father's gift, a new name, not a different name, not a replacement, but a revelation. Scripture hints at it, the name written on a white stone known only to the one who receives it. Tonight you will not hear the name, but you will see what it means. The door opens silently, and inside is nothing. At first, just white, glowing softly, perfectly still. And then letters begin to form. They're not written in ink. They're built from presence. Each one a note of eternity drawn together in a rhythm your heart recognizes but your mind cannot translate. The letters don't spell a word. They become one sound, one name, too pure to pronounce, too sacred to echo. You feel the name not as sound but as identity. It isn't something added to him. It is something revealed, something that has always been true, but only now allowed to be known. Even now it is only partly shown. Because this name, this eternal name, isn't for display. It's a seal, a final mark of completion. The Father's private declaration to the Son, "You are everything I ever meant to say." Jesus looks at the name and smiles. Not with triumph, not even with satisfaction, but with peace. Because now the journey is full. The veil torn, the scroll touched, the wound honored, the name unlocked. You glance toward the doorframe. Etched faintly in the light are other stones, smaller, still white, still waiting. One of them glows ever so slightly as you pass, and something in your spirit leaps. Because this room isn't just for him, it's for you too. Someday, somewhere, you will hear your new name. Not because you earned it, but because he carried it for you until you were ready to know it. Jesus places one hand on the glowing name and speaks not aloud but inward. It is finished. Not the cross, not the pain, but the becoming. He exits the room. So do you. And the door closes quietly behind you. Some believe heaven shouts your name. Others say heaven only sings his. But tonight you've seen the truth. There is a name you haven't heard yet, and it's yours. Held in love, hidden in light, and waiting. The hallway now feels different, not like a path to something, but a return to something. A soft hum begins to rise in the air around you. It isn't music, not exactly. It's melody, unformed, unfinished, familiar. You follow Jesus as he walks quietly into a space with no visible boundaries. Just open atmosphere swirling in subtle color like light seen through memory. And then the melody completes itself. It doesn't crash in like an anthem. It doesn't unfold like a choir. It remembers itself into being. And you realize this is his melody. The one creation has always tried to echo. The one the angels hum under their breath when no one is listening. The one woven into birdsong, thunder, lullabies, and oceans. The melody that was always his. He steps forward, and the music answers him not with crescendo, but with recognition. The notes bend toward him like wheat in wind, like sound bowing to its composer. You feel your spirit hum along without effort. It's not something you have to learn. It's something you already knew. Because this song was written into you before you were born, before your name was spoken, before the first stars blinked awake. Somewhere in this melody you hear Eden. Not the place, the feeling. You hear the laughter of a child with no shame, the rhythm of water unpolluted by time, the breath of Adam as he named things without fear, the heartbeat of peace before exile. All of it was this melody. And now, it has returned to the one who sang it first. Jesus doesn't sing, he listens. Because the song is not about him, it is him. You notice now that the melody begins to reflect things, moments shimmering mid-air like soft echoes of truth. You see, the wedding at Cana wine overflowing where joy once ran dry. The moment in the upper room when bread broke and the world held its breath. The breath of a leper who dared to hope. A woman's trembling hands as she reached for the hem of healing. The melody doesn't just remember miracles. It remembers hearts. Because this song is made not from music theory, but from divine memory. And now it plays for him, for the only one who never forgot any of it. Somewhere nearby, you see an angel standing eyes closed. A single tear floats from his cheek. You understand why. Because even heaven is undone by this sound. Some say worship is what heaven sounds like. Others say silence is the highest praise. But here you hear a truth too gentle to be loud. He had a song before time, and he never stopped singing it, even when no one listened, even when nails tried to end it, even when the tomb tried to silence it. The melody fades not because it ends, but because he has absorbed it again. He carries it now not just in heart, but in every part of him. And as he turns to leave, something astonishing happens. You hear your own name woven into the harmony. It's quiet. You might miss it, but it's there. Because this melody wasn't written to impress angels. It was written to reach you. You walk beside him a little quieter now as the room fades behind. And even as the silence returns, you still hear the song. Not in your ears, in your being. Some say heaven sings endlessly. Others believe the song changes every moment. But now you know, there was always a melody that was only his, and somehow it always included you. You walk beside him in silence now, though it's not really silence. It's more like a sacred pause, the kind that follows a symphony just before the audience exhales. The space around you gently reshapes edges, softening air, warming as you enter a narrow corridor unlike any you've seen before. It doesn't shimmer, it doesn't sing, it remembers. The walls are dark not with shadow but with memory, and as you walk they begin to show you things. Moments, flashes. The cross, but not in graphic agony, not in brutal detail, in echoes. Jesus walks slightly ahead of you, but you can feel it now, the weight he once bore pressing lightly on this space. Not because it still hurts, but because he chooses to carry the memory. This is heaven's memory of the cross. Here it is not a spectacle, it is not a debate, it is not even a symbol. It is a testament. And the corridor tells it in fragments shown not to provoke pain, but to evoke awe. You see, the wooden beam pressed into his shoulders, rough and splintered. The trembling of the earth as the first nail met the flesh. The moment when the sky dimmed, not in anger, but in reverence. The silent breath he drew when no one thought he could. The tear of his mother who knew from the cradle where the path would end. And yet there is no shame here, only glory wrapped in scars. Jesus does not flinch. He walks calmly, reverently. Every step through this corridor is a step through remembrance, not for himself, but for you. Because even now he wants you to know, I didn't forget what I endured for you. I remember, and I still say you're worth it. You turn to your left. The wall shows you something even more intimate. Your story. Not in detail, just a scene, a moment. You somewhere in the past aching quietly, maybe crying alone, maybe not even praying, just existing in a pain you didn't know how to name. And in that scene, you see his shadow. He was there, not fixing it, not forcing you forward, just being present. You look to Jesus now startled. He nods once gently. Yes, I was there. And the corridor continues. Now you see other faces. A woman reaching up as stones fall. A tax collector returning coins. A disciple weeping bitterly into his hands. Each moment tied not to greatness, but to surrender. Each soul touched not by glory, but by grace. Some believe heaven forgets pain. Others think the cross is a one-time event. But now you've seen the truth. Heaven remembers, because Jesus asked it to, not to glorify the violence, but to glorify the love. At the end of the corridor, there is a single chair, simple, worn, wooden. It looks like something from earth, from a carpenter's home. Jesus pauses at it and sits, just for a moment. And that one image speaks louder than all the visions before. The Son of God still rests in the memory of what he gave. You feel your knees weaken not from fear, but from reverence too strong to hold upright. Because suddenly you understand the cross was not forced on him. It was embraced. And in that embrace, he remembered you forever. He rises again, no dramatics, no swelling music. Just strength calm and holy flowing like breath. And as you both exit the corridor, the shadows don't follow. Because they don't need to. They're already fulfilled. The corridor of remembrance fades behind you, and with it the weight of sorrow slowly dissolves, not erased but transformed. You feel it in your chest, that odd sacred ache of something both beautiful and heartbreaking, like hearing a lullaby written for someone who never woke up and knowing it still mattered. Jesus walks ahead again. The atmosphere changes, lighter now, warmer, almost playful like the first moment of laughter after a long night of tears. And then you hear it. A laugh. Quick, pure, joyful. It echoes once, then again, rolling softly through this next chamber like a bell made from joy. You look up. A child is running through the light. Not from danger, not in fear. He's playing, dancing barefoot in the glow, a grin so wide you almost forget everything that came before. Jesus pauses, watches, smiles. The child runs straight to him, arms, open eyes bright, and laughs again. And you remember, this child was once dying. You feel it in your spirit before the story even shows itself. He was sick, small, unseen. And yet one day in a dusty street corner, a woman reached for Jesus' robe. And he was healed. No crowds remembered him, no scrolls recorded his name, but heaven never forgot. And he never forgot Jesus. Now the child grabs his hand and tugs him toward a corner of the room where something glows softly. A small basin, a flower, a fragment of torn cloth. Holy relics, not because they're worshipped, but because they're remembered. These are moments from lives that never made headlines, but were completely changed by a single encounter. A blind girl's laughter, a merchant's whispered prayer at midnight, a soldier's guilty hands held still by grace. The ones who met him once and never stopped being thankful. Jesus kneels by the basin. The child places something in it, a stone. Not glowing, just his. His story, his worship, his offering. You realize this basin isn't ceremonial. It's relational. It holds pieces of ordinary gratitude offered freely by the unnoticed faithful, who still remember what he did for them. Somewhere nearby you see a woman aged in spirit, not in face, folding a piece of cloth. She doesn't speak. She doesn't look up, but she smiles. You understand, she was healed of shame once. She carries peace like a shawl, and now even in eternity she chooses to serve quietly, still folding grace. You look to Jesus again. The child climbs into his lap and lays his head against his chest. Jesus doesn't speak. He just lets him stay. And in that image, something in your heart breaks open gently. Because the Jesus who overcame death still has time to hold the forgotten. A soft breeze moves through the room. You hear laughter again, more of it now. Other children appear joyful, radiant, filled not with innocence, but with understanding. They know who he is, and they are not afraid. Some dance, some rest. Some simply sit and gaze at him, memorizing a face they've already known their whole lives. You turn slowly and see that the light here changes depending on who stands in it. Not in color, in memory. The joy in this place is tailored, specific, deeply personal. Every soul remembers the exact moment grace entered their story. And now so do you. You hear your own laughter once, not from now, but from childhood. And you realize he was there too. He didn't only find you in pain. He was with you in joy long before you knew his name. Some believe heaven is solemn. Others expect it to be endless worship. But now you've stepped into a place that says something sweeter. He remembers the quiet healings too. The child in his arms yawns. Jesus rises gently, still holding him. You follow as he exits the chamber, passing a mural of unknown stories, each one glowing softly under an inscription written in the fabric of light. What was done in secret, I never forgot. And neither will you. The chamber of quiet joy fades behind you like a dream that stays in your chest long after your eyes open. You walk now not with questions, but with wonder. There is a sense of approaching something final, but not an ending, a culmination. A hush begins to return, not of silence, but of expectation. The atmosphere is still like a church before a wedding, or the last page of a letter not yet read aloud. You and Jesus enter a space so still you almost hesitate to breathe. At first it seems empty, but then a pulse. Not in the air, not on the ground, in spirit. A single prayer rises slow and trembling, suspended in the light like a fragile thread woven from breath. And you recognize what it is, a prayer that was never answered. Not because God forgot, not because it failed, because only he could answer it. Jesus steps forward, and the room opens slightly, not wider but deeper. Now you see them, hundreds, thousands. Single prayers floating gently like petals on still water, each one faintly glowing, suspended mid-sentence. Please don't let them die. I don't know what to do. If you're real, show me now. I don't have the strength to keep going. You feel each one brush your soul, light as mist, heavy as eternity. Jesus walks among them, not to dismiss or dissect, but to listen. And somehow he remembers every word. Not generically, personally. Some of these prayers came from voices that never made it past the tears. Some were whispered by the hopeless, some were angry, some were broken, some were barely a thought. But all were heard, and none were forgotten. You follow him deeper into the chamber where the one prayer waits. Set apart, floating alone, quieter than the rest. Dimmer but still glowing. Jesus approaches it slowly. You watch it quiver as if it knows it's finally been noticed again. And then it speaks. A voice small, shaking, real. Please, I just want to be known. The voice of a child, or someone who felt like one. Alone, forgotten, unseen. You feel the ache in it like the echo of your own most private questions. And Jesus, he answers, not with a command, Not with a miracle, with a whisper. I've always known you. The prayer glows brightly for a moment, then dissolves. Not into nothing, into peace. You look around. More prayers begin to fall gently into rest, their purpose fulfilled, not by getting what was asked, but by being heard and held. Jesus doesn't rush through them. He gives each one the dignity of remembrance. The ones prayed in hospital rooms, the ones from behind locked bathroom doors, the ones screamed into pillows, typed into phones then deleted, held silently in clenched fists. All of them are here, and they do not accuse. They trust, even now. Some people think unanswered prayers are failures. Others believe they are forgotten. But in this sacred place you see the truth. Some prayers are not answered with outcomes. They are answered with presence. Jesus turns to you now. His expression is calm. No tears, no sadness, only assurance. You weren't alone, not then, not ever. He places a hand gently over the space where the last prayer faded, and from the floor rises a single flower, not grand, not glowing, just soft, alive, a promise that nothing spoken in faith is ever wasted. He walks on, you follow, and as you step through the final edge of the chamber, you hear a voice, not human, not angelic, just true. Even the prayers no one heard were never alone. You step through the veil of prayer, and for a moment it feels like you're floating not forward, not up, but inward. The air is different here, heavier, but not oppressive. More like entering the still center of a storm that has finally passed. And ahead, a table. Long, worn, familiar. You know it before you know it. This is the upper room, but not the one in Jerusalem. This is heaven's memory of it. Jesus walks toward the table, and you follow your footsteps, making no sound, as if the ground itself knows to stay silent. The table stretches far beyond what makes earthly sense. Yet it feels personal, intimate, set not for a crowd, but for you. You approach one of the chairs and run your fingers across the wood. It's warm. Not heavenly warm, just familiar. Like something that once sat in your grandmother's kitchen. Jesus stands at the head of the table. No one else is here, not yet. And still the table is full. Not of food, but of remembrance. The cup is there, the bread is there, and between them, a towel, folded waiting. Not decorative, purposeful. He picks it up and walks around the table slowly. No one else's feet need washing, but still he kneels. Not to clean, but to remember. To honor that moment when glory wrapped itself in humility, and the God who could part seas chose instead to wipe dust from the souls of men who would run doubt and betray. Jesus sets the towel back down. You feel the ache of it, but it doesn't hurt. It grounds you. This is the kind of place where heaven teaches you how to stay soft even after the world tried to make you hard. He lifts the bread, now not in ceremony but in recognition, and you understand something deeply strange and deeply beautiful. He still breaks the bread, not for show, not as symbol, as a reminder that he is still being given. Every time someone forgives when it's hardest, every time someone lets go of revenge, every time love costs something, he is still the bread. He sets the bread down and lifts the cup. The wine is darker here, almost like time itself has aged inside it. He doesn't drink. He just holds it, looks at it, and then gently he says more into the room than to you. I won't drink this again until all are gathered. The words are gentle, familiar, echoes from scripture. But here now in this place, they feel alive. Not like prophecy, like promise. You glance down the long, long table. You can't see the end, but you know. There are places set for more. For the weary, for the doubting, for the ones who think they're too late, for you. Jesus walks again, gently touching the backs of the chairs as he passes. Not marking who will sit there, just welcoming. One by one, no urgency, just the steady rhythm of readiness. Some believe heaven is gold and gems. Others think it's endless music. But here in this quiet place you learn something better. Heaven is a table, set not for the worthy, but for the willing. And the host still waits, still breaks bread, still holds out the cup. Jesus looks at you now. His eyes hold peace. And for just a moment, a flicker of the loneliness he endured at this table so long ago. Not to guilt you, to remind you, even in abandonment, I stayed. The table doesn't vanish as you leave. It lingers, because it was never just furniture. It was invitation, and one day you'll return, not as a visitor, but as a guest. The table fades slowly behind you, not disappearing, but staying anchored in some part of your spirit like a home you now carry with you. There's no door ahead this time, no corridor, no veil, just open space. And in the distance, a throne, not massive or ostentatious, not shining with gold or ringed with thunder. It's simple, solid, alive, and beside it, a second seat, empty. Not forgotten, not reserved for someone else. Just waiting. You walk beside Jesus, and as you do, the air itself seems to recognize this final passage. Everything stills. Every breath becomes a prayer. Every step becomes a vow. This is the place where all authority was restored, where love did not just descend, but returned in victory. You feel it in your bones. This is not the Jesus of Galilee or even of the upper room. This is the King, the risen one, the beginning and the end. And yet, he's still the one who wept, still the one who washed feet, still the one who bled. The throne is close now. No one guards it. No angel sings over it. It just waits serene, secure, settled. Jesus slows as he approaches. And for a long moment, he doesn't sit. He just looks at it, as if remembering every step between here and the garden where the sweat turned to blood. Then finally, he sits, and the space responds, not with trumpet, not with blinding light. With peace so complete it settles into your spirit like warm rain. He does not raise his hands. He does not speak. And still all creation seems to bow without bowing. Every spiritual force, every star and song and story aligns in quiet obedience. The king is seated, and then something stirs. A soft shimmer of movement. You look beyond the throne and see figures approaching, one by one, quietly, deliberately. The saints, not robed in power, not parading in triumph, but radiant in grace. You recognize some, others you do not. But every one of them walks not with pride, but with joy so deep it almost sounds like laughter. They do not bow. They stand before him, and Jesus smiles. You realize in this moment, this is the welcome home, not a spectacle, not a reward show, but the soft arrival of souls into the arms of the one who waited their whole lives for this embrace. You watch as a woman clutches her chest, overwhelmed not by judgment, but by the fact that he still remembers her story. A man falls to his knees, not in fear, but because his legs simply give out from joy. A child leaps into his arms, and you swear the whole sky brightens with laughter. One by one, they gather not in lines, not in ranks, just together, the family returning. And then Jesus looks at you, not from a throne of distance, but from the place where authority and intimacy meet. He doesn't call you forward. He doesn't need to. You're already walking. And as you approach, something in you finally loosens. Not doubt, not fear, but that ancient ache you carried through life, the longing to belong. You fall to your knees. He places a hand on your head. And for the first time since all of this began, you don't need to speak, because he already knows. Some say heaven is glory. Others say it's rest. But now you know, heaven is where your name is already loved. You rise slowly, and the saints begin to sing not loud, not rehearsed, just real, like the sound of breath returning to lungs that never fully forgot what it was to live. And in their voices, one truth remains. The throne is not the end. It is the beginning of forever. There's no more walking now. You stand within the heart of it all. The throne behind you, the saints beside you, the memory of every step still warm in your spirit. Jesus doesn't speak again, not because there is nothing left to say, but because everything has already been said. Here, silence is not the absence of voice, it's the fullness of understanding. And slowly the light begins to change. It doesn't dim, it softens, becomes more like breath, like dawn through linen curtains, like the last flickers of candlelight when sleep begins to pull you home. Jesus steps down from the throne, not in resignation, but in reassurance. He walks among the gathered again, not as king or judge or lamb, but as friend. His robe brushes gently against those he passes. No one clings to him. No one needs to. Because here there is no more striving, just belonging. He stops beside you, places a hand over your shoulder, and for a long, wordless moment, you just exist in his presence. Whole, safe, held. Behind him, the saints begin to disperse, not in retreat, but in rhythm. They melt into gardens and glades, courtyards, and constellations, each drawn to a corner of heaven prepared just for them. There are no streets of gold here. There are no pearly gates, just rooms full of remembrance paths made of peace and windows that open to the sound of eternity, humming softly through trees that never shed their leaves. You feel it now, the winding down. Not like an end, like a landing, as if your soul has been gently placed upon a pillow of light and is now allowed to rest. Jesus begins to walk again, and you follow through one final arch of woven air and promise into a space so still and simple it might as well be your childhood room remade in glory. Here, everything fades. The visions, the colors, even the sounds, not into darkness, into stillness. And slowly you lie down, not because you're told, because you've arrived, and he sits beside you. One last time. He leans close and in a voice barely above a whisper says, "Now rest, I'll keep watch." And with those words, the entire journey folds inward, like a book returned to the shelf, not forgotten, not closed, but kept, for the next time, whenever you need it. Let everything settle now. Let your breathing soften. Let your shoulders fall gently into stillness. Let the scenes you've walked through tonight become part of you, not as memory, but as reassurance. You've seen a Jesus who walks not only in power, but in tenderness, who steps into heaven not to conquer, but to carry home every name, every cry, every prayer whispered into the dark. Tonight you've walked side by side with the one who knelt in gardens, who stood before gates, who broke bread, who carried wounds, and who now waits, only ever to welcome. You don't need to remember every detail. Your spirit already has. Somewhere deep within you now, a room stays lit. A table stays set. A melody keeps humming just beneath your thoughts. You are known. You are remembered. You are loved by the one who visits heaven not only to rule, but to prepare a place for those who dared to hope. Let that hope carry you now gently, slowly into rest. Let your mind drift without fear. Let your breath follow the rhythm of that first eternal peace be with you. And if dreams come, let them be filled with light. Because even now, even here, he still keeps watch. End of script. Sweet dreams.